Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about the fifth lesson I learned over my last 1,000 trades. And that fifth lesson for me was to really understand the meaning of a signal bar and understand its relevance to my trading and kind of redefine it in a sense. So a signal bar, or any bar, it doesn't really exist. It's just a visual representation of the price at any particular time. So the 5-minute chart, which is what I trade, every bar is just a picture of where the price is at every 5 minutes. And that's not to take any importance away from it. I actually think it's very important. But for me to really understand signal bars and for me to feel like I'm making a decision with evidence and understanding what I'm doing and the actions I'm taking, I feel like I really had to dig deeper and to understand, why am I buying above this bar closing on its high? What does that mean? And what is it telling me about the lower time frames? What's the bigger picture? And going through this kind of quest of understanding what this bar is telling me, I guess that's what I'm kind of explaining in this video. So the ideal case for a bull signal bar is that it closes on or near its high. And what that means is that at that specific point in time, the price is at the high of that interval. So at a 5-minute interval, if the 5-minute bar closes on its high, it means that the price during that 5-minute interval is near the top of that time period. And that's true for every interval, every time period, or every time frame. And usually the bar closing on its high is because the price is spending most of the time at the high of that interval. So over the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30-minute period, if it's closing at its high, it's because when that picture was taken at the end of the interval, the price was there. And usually it's there because it's spending a lot of time there. And what I've found with a lot of 5-minute signal bars, but probably for all signal bars, is that on a lower time frame, it's actually often a bull impulse for 1 or 2 minutes, and then a consolidation for the last 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes. So when that picture is taken at the end of the interval, it shows it closing at its high. But the story behind that signal bar is that it's often a bull flag, an impulse and a bull flag. And that's why it looks like it, well, that's why it is closing on the high, because it's spending time at the high of the bar. There aren't enough sellers to push the bar down. And so if we go down to the 1-minute chart, or if we shrink down from any time frame by a factor of 5, a lot of signal bars are actually, or even by a factor of 10 or 20, on a lower time frame, that signal bar is closing on the high because of an impulse and a flag. Now, another way that a signal bar closes on the high is because the lower time frame charts are constantly pressing up against the highs. So if the price is just constantly increasing, is extremely strong buyers, then as the price increases, without many pullbacks, let's say we're at 0.0 and the price is just really rallying without many pullbacks, the 1-minute chart, the 2-minute chart, every minute that passes, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-minute chart, all of them will close on their highs because the price is constantly spending most of its time at the top of that interval. And so a strong surge in price will result in all those bars closing on the highs. And so sometimes a 5-minute signal bar is because we have a really strong rally on the 1-minute chart. So it's a combination of 5 1-minute bars that are closing near their highs or constantly pressing up against the highs that create a 5-minute signal bar. But that's also because the price is just constantly increasing or not finding sellers as it rallies. Whereas a bar that goes up and finds sellers usually will not close on its high because it's not spending that much time there. So as soon as it gets to that price, there are sellers. And so at every 5-minute interval of time, when there's a picture taken for that bar, it's usually not there because there's always sellers. So the signal bar closing on its high represents a lack of sellers at the high of the bar, which means that it's potentially the start of a move. And so how my interpretation of signal bars have changed is that I see it more now as not a signal to do anything. It's not an actionable signal, but it's a sign of buying. And so what I realized is that when there's a 5-minute buy signal, so for example, we have consecutive climaxes down or 2 or 3 consecutive pushes down for a bull flag, and then we have a 5-minute buy signal. What I started to notice as I was looking at different time frames, and just intuitively, that I think is obvious to everyone, is that if there's a good buy on the 5-minute chart, so if there's a buy signal on the 5-minute chart, that is going to lead to a trade with a positive expectancy, so it's going to rally, then it's going to rally on all time frames, not just a 5-minute chart. If it's going to bounce on the 5-minute and rally, it's going to bounce and on the 1-minute chart, it's going to bounce on the 10-minute, it's going to bounce on the hour, it's going to bounce on every chart. So that must mean that there's a reason to buy on every chart. And it may not be obvious in the form of a specific bar or a specific signal, but it's clearly going to rally everywhere across the entire market. And it's not just because of one signal bar on one time frame. It's because of something much greater than that. And that was the biggest lesson for me, is that it's bouncing because of context. Now, as we go higher and higher in time frames, we're not going to see the same nuance and the same architecture as we would on a lower time frame. So if we have 24 bars on the 5-minute chart, we're going to see more swings, we're going to see more potential targets, potential resistance areas. Whereas on the hourly chart, those 24 5-minute bars are just going to be 2 bars. So it may not make as much sense to take a trade there, but it's still true that it's going to bounce there. And so I think that context of that the market is ripe for a bounce is the most important thing, and that's the major lesson. That same logic is true on the 6-minute chart as well. If we have a buy signal on the 5-minute chart, then that has to be a buy on the 6-minute chart as well. Even though that 6-minute bar has a minute left to complete that bar, it's still a buy. And that's true on the 10-minute chart as well. Even though the 10-minute chart is only halfway through the bar, if we have a buy signal on the 5-minute chart, it's still a buy on the 10-minute. Now that probably takes a lot more experience to be able to buy during a bar and gauge the strength of a bounce, because as I mentioned earlier, there is value to seeing a bar close on the high. But I think the main point is that the context matters the most, and that bounce can be interpreted on many different time frames. And if with experience, it can be taken on many different time frames. And that's also true on the 1-minute chart and 2-minute chart. A 5-minute signal bar is 5 bull bars on the 1-minute chart, or 5 up bars on the 1-minute chart. And it's 2.5 bull bars or up bars on the 2-minute chart. And it's 1 and 2/3 of a bar on the 3-minute chart. And though that buying pressure manifests in an infinite number of ways, but because with the understanding of the context, it can be taken in many different ways if a trader understands that it's context that matters, and then understanding signs of strength. And I think I finally understand what Al Brooks meant what he means when he says, look for signs of strength, look for signs of buying pressure, like how you can build buying pressure with time, or you can build it with price, or you can build it with one bar closing above the high of the prior bar, or closing near the high of the bar. These are all signs of strength, and you don't necessarily need one bar to tell you that it's a buy or that it's an actionable step that you can take. It's about understanding context and then understanding what the signs of strength are. And I think one of the big reasons that I struggled with this is because the majority of my education when I first started was on Japanese candlesticks and Steve Nison's candlesticks. And most of candlestick theory is to look at gravestone dojis and hammers and shooting stars as if that the bar itself is an actionable step. But the bar itself is only part of it. And that bar is made up of many smaller bars. And sometimes the time frame you're trading doesn't have a perfect bar, but it has other signs of strength. And so I think that's what I'm starting to see more and more of now, is that I used to miss so many trades because I was waiting for that special bar, that signal bar. But now, as I'm getting more comfortable, I'm seeing that I have to be looking for context first and foremost, and then look for signs of strength, which are subjective and discretionary. But once I see signs of strength in a specific context, I feel a lot more comfortable to take the trade without a perfect signal bar, because I think I have a better understanding now of context. And the same is true, like I used to miss trades, I also took really bad trades, and I still do, but I take them less. And the reason is because I saw a signal bar, I was looking for a signal bar and I would see it, but it would be coming after two or three climaxes up. And I would think it's a buy signal, so I should buy. But now that I don't see it as a signal to buy, but just as a sign of buying. And this is a sign of buying, but at the wrong location. The context is not good. And that bar, that bull bar that looks like a buy signal, it's not a signal. It's just evidence of buying. And that evidence of buying is happening too high. It's happening at a resistance area. So it's not a signal to do anything. It's just a sign of buying at an area that's too high to do anything actionable. And the same goes for sell signals. I was selling below low ones and bear bars in the wrong areas because I thought that they were sell signals and that the trend was going to continue. But that bear bar to me now just looks like selling. It's a sign of selling pressure, but it doesn't mean anything without the context. And I think that was just one of the biggest lessons for me, and something I'm still learning. But just to see every bar as not a signal, but evidence. It's evidence of selling or evidence of buying, and what's going to make me pull the trigger on something is almost entirely based on the context. And so taking a good signal bar with a bad context is 100 times worse than taking a really bad signal bar with an amazing context, because that's still a good trade, because a context, it makes or breaks it. I feel like understanding context and knowing that context is important, so that I focus more time and energy on learning about it and understanding it and looking for it on a day-to-day basis when I'm taking trades, instead of just looking at the bar in front of me, looking at all the bars before it, and the overall picture has made a huge difference for me. So I hope you find this video helpful. It was definitely helpful for me. I think it made a big difference in my understanding of the market and in my trading overall. If you liked the video, please like the video, and please subscribe to my channel. It would mean a lot to me. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so that I can finally monetize my channel and help bring in some extra income while I'm on this trading journey. So if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, and I'll see you in the next one.